don't want anybody else.
Me not think about you.
I touch myself high.
Tired. So tired. Overtired.
Hi, everybody. This is the Overtired podcast. I'm here today with Brett Terpstra. Say hello, Brett.
Hello, Jeff.
I love commanding hellos.
Wait,
Christina
hello, Brett.
Warren. Christina Warren, say hello.
Hello.
And our special guest, Taylor Swift. She's not really here, but she's here in spirit.
She
We'll
is
talk
here in
all about
spirit.
her. Just get ready. Start stretching. It's good to see you all. I haven't seen you. I guess it was only a week I took off, but it feels like longer for some reason.
Yeah,
Good
we
to be
missed
back.
you.
Thank you. Glad to be
Yeah,
here.
you've had some tooth trauma. What's going on with your mouth?
Everybody loves to hear people's dental problems.
Mhm.
So I went into I had this horrible pain, and I had it for a little while, and I went into the dentist because I was about to leave town because some friends and we rented a little island with a cabin on it. And
Wow.
and I was going to be living on an island in northern Minnesota for like 4 days, but I had all this tooth pain. So I went in just to see if there was anything to be done, if they could look at it. And they were like, "Oh, this tooth is like dying. It's called resorption." And the idea is basically that my body has targeted that tooth and is sort of sending all of its negative dark energy to the tooth. And the tooth was just like decaying from the inside. It was just a really bizarre thing. I've never heard of it. And they're like, this has to get pulled. And so just yesterday, I went and got it pulled. I have very long roots. I've had this problem since a kid. When I get my teeth pulled, I already know what they're going to say before they say it, which is like, okay, this is going to take a little extra time, right? And I may have to take this off in not 2 pieces, but 4 to 6 pieces, which is
good
what
Lord.
happened yesterday. I was in the dentist chair for 3 hours.
Oh my
I was
God.
in it so long that other staff were coming in to say goodnight to the dentist.
Oh my God.
And there were definitely points where he wasn't exactly sure he was going to be able to get everything out. But he remained comfortably confident, unlike some dentists who are just, I think, ridiculously confident. And we got that thing out. And now I have this like massive hole, and I hate it. There's a gap between my teeth. It was a big molar. And I also now can say that pretty soon 6 of my 8 molars will be either crowns or, in this case, an implant. So I'm knocking them off one by one.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah.
My
Successful.
dentist looks for any excuse not to use Novocaine. She's
Yeah,
always
I
like,
remember this.
she's
about
always
your
like,
dentist.
no, this will be. I barely have to drill it all.
Oh
We're
my
just
God.
gonna just hold on. It won't take long. And I always end up crying because I get like super tense, and then the pain
Mhm.
starts, and
Right.
then I'm just like, this combination of expectation and actual tooth pain. Like a tear always runs down my cheek, and
Oh,
I
man.
told her last time, I'm like, if you make me cry, I'm fucking switching dentists.
Yeah.
And she still insisted that this one won't require Novocaine. It'll just be a quick drill.
So I've had a version of that where my dentist will say, "I'm pretty sure you don't need it. How do you feel about moving forward? And if you think like you can't handle it, we stop immediately and just get out the needles." But like the idea that she's kind of suggesting that the correct way to
Despite
go.
my protestation, she's suggesting that I don't need it.
That's not how you help people.
That's not.
That is actually how a lot of
No.
people help people, but it's not how you should help people.
So I swore in front of her. I said the F-bomb in front of her. I think I mentioned that on a show previously.
Yes, you did.
And she like called me out on it, and it was like, don't use that language in front of. Next visit, she leans over. She's telling a story to her like her hygienist, and she leans over and whispers something, as if like in a solidarity kind of thing. Like she knows I'm down with it, so she's like, I'm gonna swear under my breath to make me feel okay, I guess. I don't know, but I mean that's the thing about swearing is it's a social construct. Like you swear to test the waters, and if someone's okay with it, you swear within reason. If you swear too much, you've broken the social bond. Like there's a way to overdo it. Even if someone's comfortable with swearing, like you can still swear too much for that person. So it's a constant give and take to figure out like how much swearing is okay, what words are okay, and if you don't respond to it properly, you break the social contract, and like you can really screw things up. But I think she was making an effort to be social like that.
One of my favorite experiences ever. So at Gizmodo, when I moved from Mashable to Gizmodo, one of the biggest changes was obviously the amount of swearing you could do. I think Mashable now they curse a little bit more, but at the time, like
In writing.
in writing, I was the
Yeah.
only person who would ever like successfully, I think, other than maybe if there was a direct quote for something, I was like one of the only people who would ever like been able to curse, like at least with the F bomb, like in like a lead sentence, right? And I once
But
even
not a
almost got
headline.
I almost got it in a headline. It was approved as a headline, and then it was changed at the last minute, and I was mad because the headline was so good. It was when the Ashley Madison hack happened, and I said, "Ashley
Mhm.
Madison is fucked," was my headline, and that remained the slug, and it was approved. I won approval for it, and then
It's
the
good
editor who was
SEO.
it would have actually this was the argument for why Chris Taylor, who I love and he's great, ended up changing it to Ashley Madison is so screwed, and he was probably right to do so. It did better on Facebook, and it got like shitloads of Facebook traffic, and it
Did
would
you A/B test this? Do you know that?
no, but Facebook, and I don't know if they still do, but at the time they would not like promote things that had like cursing and headlines,
Sure.
right? So in terms
Oh,
so in terms of like if we share to our page, the way it's going to be reshared and other stuff like would be impacted. So it was ultimately probably the right move, but I I mean, there was a part of me that died inside because I was like, God, it was such a good headline. And I successfully won it. So I go over to Gizmodo. Gizmodo, they curse all the time. It's not a big deal. And my first month there, Alex Dickinson, our deputy editor, great guy, sends out an email who basically saying, "Look, you're cussing too much. Like it's fine. We want to do it, but it's losing its value because you're doing it so much that it's
Yeah.
like it's losing its edge and it's just coming across as just kind of cringy." And I was like, man, I'm at the right place because this is the sort of emails we get, which is like not don't curse, just
yeah.
save it and use it better. Um, but
That's just
yeah,
like it's interesting because that's just like Brett, what you were describing in social situations where you can
exactly. No, you nailed
you
it.
can
No,
test the waters, but then it's going to get to the point where you're like, oh, okay, there's a threshold I didn't see coming.
Yeah.
right. And in this case, the threshold wasn't even so much like, oh, we think this is socially distasteful. It's just more like it's eye roll inducing, and it's not like the shock value and things that you think that you're achieving aren't there anymore.
Well, like I was
Yeah.
raised to believe that swearing was a sign of low intelligence.
Yeah, me too. Fuck that.
People with good vocabularies don't swear. And as I grew up and like became more literate, I began to realize that swearing absolutely has a place in language. Like it can
Absolutely.
be very pointed and it can really underscore a sentiment. I
Mhm.
think there is absolutely I think some of the most intelligent people know where to put an F-bomb in a sentence
Oh yeah.
and punctuate it and make it relatable without making it obscene.
When I joined my wife's family, both my mother-in-law and her grandmother said privately to her, I don't normally like it when people swear, but it doesn't bug me the way Jeff does it. And I've always thought of that as my skill. But man, sometimes now with news articles or any kind of article, I always love it when a source gives a great quote with a swear word in it.
Yes.
Because
Me too.
you never expect that. And I don't mean that like dimly or thick. I'm not like thick in the head or anything. I just mean like it can like take you by surprise, right? Except my favorite example of that, I keep some very short sound bites of interviews I've done over the years. And one of the most bizarre, like obvious quotes I ever had was from Ian Mackay of Fugazi and Minor Threat. He says to me in the middle of the interview, I mean, I'm a fucking punk rocker. And I was like, yeah, okay, I know. Like that's your whole fucking deal. So I saved that to just play for people every once in a while. I'm a fucking punk rocker.
So, should we do a mental health corner?
Very briefly, because we have to talk about Taylor Swift. This is very
We
important.
do. This
Yeah.
is a Taylor Swift episode. Yeah, I'll try to keep mine short. So I found the definition of it's cyclothymia, or it's cyclothymia. I don't know exactly how it's pronounced, but the definition of it is hypomanic episodes alternating with light depression, and without rapid cycling, without a lot of stability in between. And that I think that's what I actually have instead of bipolar 2. I think I have cyclothymia. I have not yet discussed it with my psychiatrist. My therapist thought, yeah, that makes perfect sense, but
Interesting.
he's not licensed to diagnose that kind of thing. So I have yet to bring it up with my therapist, but man, I am absolutely realizing I don't have an between depression and mania. And I'm going through this thing, right? Like, I have this very deep conviction right now that I will ultimately hurt everybody I love. And this feeling that when people say I love you, like, in my head, I'm like, that's awesome, I love you too, but you're gonna get fucked on this deal. That I will eventually hurt. And like, some people in my life have been very forgiving over time, but also I walked out of a marriage, and I walked out of friendships, and I get bored and I hurt people, or I fuck up and I hurt people. And man, when I'm not mad, it shit really weighs on my mind. You start to
Interesting.
wonder, like, would the people I love be better off if I'd never been born? I am not suicidal. Do not take this as me being
Well, we
And
were
that's
heading
suicidal.
not
there.
true.
Yeah. Right. And that's not true. Yeah.
But it is what weighs on my mind in times like this.
It's a
Yeah.
question that can only be answered falsely by you.
Yes. No, you're right. You're right, though. That's the thing, is that it is one of those things where, because I think a lot of us have that question a lot of times, and it's upsetting. I'm sorry that you're having it now. And I think that it is worth, like, weighing on, like, those things that we do that, like, nag at us, and, like, this is like, certainly these are the things that keep me up at night, right? Like, the self-loathing parts, like the things where you, like, question every decision you've ever made, and decisions you haven't made, and how you are. And that can be really um debilitating. But to Jeff's point, like, it is one of those things where we can only answer it falsely, but the answer is definitively no. People would not be better off. Like, you provide value. Like, there are some people, I'm not gonna, like, pretend like that there aren't situations where there are some people where I look back at my life and I'm like, I would have been better off if I had not known them, and if I had not met them, and if they had not been in my life, right? That's accurate, I think, for everyone. But, like, that's not the case with you, right? Like, even the worst things you've ever done to people, like, the good and the other things that you've done with them outweigh that. And you know, and I think that like, my father had, like, a pretty complicated relationship with his mother, and she's one of those people, I think back, I'm like, nothing of value would have been lost if she had never been in my life, if I'd never known her or anything. Like, nothing of value would be lost. I'm not going to say my life would have been better, but zero would have been lost. But I think that even him, is debilitating and is, like, oppressive and as hard as that relationship was, in a lot of ways, if you were to ask him, would my life have been better off if she had never been around, he would respond no, right? Like, he still got something there, which, like, as an outsider, it's hard for me to grasp that. I'm like, man, I would be like, if you could have a do-over and have her not exist, sure.
If this is still relevant in a future week, I will revisit it and offer my rebuttal. But we have Taylor to get to,
We do
so I'm
have
going to
Taylor to get
accept what
to.
you're saying. Thank you for your feedback.
My mental health check-in is that I went away with two other couples, my wife and I, and two other couples, their kids, our kids. Our kids have all been friends forever. It's how we know each other as adults. and it is a relationship that has been really just getting tighter and tighter by the years. We've done different vacations together. This time we rented an island in northern Minnesota with like the gnarliest, most delightful disaster of a pontoon boat ever, which had the name Leisure Island, Leisure Island, if you're classy. Um, and I just have this memory because actually the first night we were all there together, I had to bow out because I had taken Tylenol with codeine for my tooth, which it turns out doesn't play with lithium. And so I was super nauseous and ultimately was just like in there throwing up. It was awful. But from the other room, I could hear all of these people, 10 people, ranging from eighth grade to, I suppose I'm the oldest, I think. But they're all just like having a blast. And it was that kind of easy fun that you can have with people you've known for a while. And it was so cool because all the kids were part of it, whatever. Like, it just felt good. I don't have a lot of friendships that are like newish. And these are, within 15 years or so. And it was just like really good for me to be in that space with those people. And fortunately I wasn't throwing up the rest of the trip. Just waking up onto a porch with, four friends who are having coffee and staring at the lake and just talking about whatever comes. And
That sounds nice.
Yeah.
without my wife, I don't know that these things would happen to me. She does a really good job of finding the good things and keeping them close. Whereas I'm more likely to just want to hide. But it's just lovely and wonderful. So that was super nice.
That's beautiful.
Christina, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm going to be in San Francisco next week. As usual, work is often at times tied to my mental health because that's me, which is other stuff I probably need to deal with. But yeah, I'm doing well. If we have time to get into it, I've been pissing some people off on Twitter, which is always fun for me. So
Just don't worry, it's all going to be wiped clean in a couple days when Elon's officially in charge. Actually, he's been firing people left and right, hasn't he?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That is the core of what Christina pissed people off with.
Yeah, that's the core of what pissed them off because I was like basically like good riddance to Parag Agrawal, the Twitter CEO,
Yeah.
who I think did a pretty shitty job. A large contingent of a subcontinent did not agree with that, and yeah, so that was fun.
Okay, Christina, Taylor Swift
Yes.
has a new album.
Yep.
So much more than that to talk about in a way, because she's just like, talk about
Yes.
constellations. There's like extra songs over here, and there's a video, and there's all right. I know that Brett and I had homework, but
Yes.
I think, and I want to hear from Brett. I have nothing interesting to offer that is original of my own. I really enjoyed listening to the album. I listened to it a few times over, and
Nice. Thank you for doing the homework. Brett did not put that much into it, and he never does. So this is one of the reasons I'm so.
I gave it a full listen.
I know you did, and I appreciate that. That is
and
more
I
than
watched
I
the
expected,
music videos.
which again I appreciate, and I want to be clear. That's even more than I expect from you. But to see, this is why I love having Jeff on, because he like genuinely goes like above and beyond and really gets into it. And here's the thing: I love that you did it, Brett, but I know that you hated every second of it. And that you didn't want to do it, whereas like Jeff like was excited by like the homework.
I did it thoughtfully. I did it, and I thought, how do I feel about this? And I came to conclusions, and then I would be like, let's listen to one more song, and then see how I feel about it. And I did that, and I got all the way through it, and I did my homework, and you I'm not an extra credit guy, I guess.
Okay, so Christina, let's set this up a little bit. First of all, what number album is this for Taylor Swift? Number 10. First album came out.
This is 2006.
Okay.
And so it's her 10th album, but she also did 2 full re-records. So it could be number 12 if you wanted to count those. But it's the 10th original album.
And will you tell me just briefly, what is the deal with the re-records?
Yeah.
So she was signed to a record label called Big Machine Records in 2006, and they owned her masters, which is the case with almost all artists. she had wanted to get to the point where she could own her own masters and buy her old ones back, but they had basically been like, you will have to do a new album for us for each master recording you want to get back, basically like tying her into an even longer contract with them. And she, I guess, had some disputes with them about some other things. So when she left Big Machine and went to Republic, which is part of Universal, in 2017, I think she did that in part because Scott Borchetta, the owner of the label, had kind of made it clear that he wasn't super interested in continuing to own the record label, kind of wanted to cash out. What he wound up doing, I think she claims that they made efforts to buy the masters back and that they were not allowed. They dispute this. It's unclear. But he wound up selling the company and by extent all of her masters to Scooter Braun. And Scooter Braun was someone that she'd previously had negative interactions with. He's a talent manager. He like most famous for discovering Justin Bieber. He also manages Ariana Grande and Demi Lovato and some others. But he and Taylor had past negative experiences. She did not want him to own her work. He was frankly pretty dickish about it, and kind of like once he bought the label. And the whole reason you would buy Big Machine, to be very clear, the only reason you buy Big Machine is for the Taylor Swift catalog. Like that's where all the value is. So because there are some other artists that are signed there, but they're incidental. The whole reason you buy the label is for her.
And so she was on Big Machine from day one.
Yes, like
Got it.
Scott Borchetta signed her. So like she was 16, I think she was 15 when she maybe got the record deal. And he signed her. And to be clear, like he put a lot into her and made bets too, but she also very quickly took off and made the label, right? Because it was this indie label. And she also, in fairness to her, I mean, like they helped each other. I think their acrimony, it's a big part of some of the songs on Folklore. And there are a couple of songs on Midnights that allude to it too, but it's clearly a very big breakup for her, probably the biggest in her life. But then where she felt betrayed was that not only was it the label sold, what she knew was going to happen, but it was sold to this person that she did not respect and that she did not like, who then started gloating about, oh, I own this stuff now. The problem was, and this is where the re-record stuff comes in, because she is the songwriter on every single one of her songs. She's the co-writer in some cases, but she is the songwriter on every single one of her songs. They cannot license the originals unless she also gives her permission, because they own the master recording, but they don't own the songwriter credits. And you need both if you want to license something for mechanical use for film or television or advertisements, which is again the reason why you would buy the back catalog. Wouldn't just be for the royalties and streaming. No, she's famously not licensed her music much. But if someone else owns it, like they could license it. However, she has to still give her permission. So what she did is she figured out, oh, if I re-record the music, then that will take away from the profit they can make off of streaming, and I can license the re-records, but not license the originals. So basically,
wow.
In effect, cutting down how much money they could get from it. Scooter Braun still wound up flipping the catalog and sold it for like 300 and something million to Abigail Disney, I think. And they'd had some talks. Taylor did about maybe being involved with them, but Scooter still was going to receive profits after the fact, and that was kind of a deal breaker for her. So she has proceeded with saying, okay, I'm going to re-record every album I made, and she's done it in a very exacting process where, like the first two anyway, like there are some minor differences, but they are basically sound alike, and it's been a very meticulous process. And she's, I think Prince and others have done similar things, but she's certainly the first of this modern era to do this. And the whole reason was basically because she's a petty bitch, which is again a theme very common on Midnights.
What do you mean? Why? Because she's a petty bitch. Oh,
because
you're saying this is a high five moment.
Yes.
Yeah, got it.
I'm saying like this is like I'm also saying this is like a core part of her personality.
Yeah.
I want you to do the ad read. We're gonna hear Jeff's thoughts on Midnights after our break from our sponsors.
Ad time.
Ad time. This episode is brought to you by Mind Bloom. You just need to take better care of yourself is not a response to mental health struggles. You know all too well, you live with them. That's also a Taylor reference, incidentally. Sometimes you need something more to achieve a real and lasting breakthrough. Maybe it's time you check out a guided ketamine therapy program. MindBloom can help. MindBloom is the leader in at-home ketamine therapy, offering a combination of science-backed medicine with clinician and guide support for people looking to improve their mental health and well-being. MindBloom connects patients to licensed psychiatric clinicians to help them achieve better outcomes with lower costs, greater convenience, and an artfully crafted experience. To begin, take MindBloom's online assessment to determine if MindBloom is right for you. And if you're approved, you'll schedule a video consult with a licensed clinician where you'll discuss your goals and expectations for mental health treatment. MindBloom will send you a kit in the mail complete with medicine, treatment materials, and tips for getting the most out of your experience. After only 2 sessions, 87% of MindBloom clients reported improvements in depression and 85% reported improvements in anxiety. It's time to enter the next chapter in mental health and well-being. Let MindBloom guide you. Right now, MindBloom is offering our listeners $100 off your first 6-session program when you sign up at mindbloom.com/overtired and use the promo code overtired at checkout. So go to mindbloom.com/overtired and use the promo code overtired for $100 off your first 6-session program today. That's mindbloom.com/overtired, promo code overtired.
I'm super bummed that MindBloom isn't available in Minnesota. Like I wanted to try this out and it was not available to me.
Yeah, that's the one thing you need to check. Make sure it's in your area. But if it is, this is I think a great option for a lot of people who have been failed by regular medication and normal therapies.
You will find out if it's available very quickly when you go to mindbloom.com/overtired. I am going to get in trouble for this next ad read.
Okay.
I tweaked it a little bit.
Okay.
Are you missing out on your favorite show because it's not available in your region? Trying to keep your private time private? Well, let me introduce NordVPN. If you're into Norwegian blood sports the way I am, you've definitely dealt with the frustration of not being able to stream them here in the US. With NordVPN, I can switch my virtual location on my device with one click, and I can access streaming services from over 60 countries at no extra cost. This opens up a Pandora's box of entertaining content, which I wouldn't be able to access without NordVPN. It's hands down the best way to satisfy Nordic bloodlust. You've probably heard that VPNs are great for online protection, but they slow down your internet speed. Nothing worse than buffering when you're on the edge of your seat watching someone wind up for a 5-finger death punch. Luckily, NordVPN is the fastest VPN in the world. I don't even notice it running, so I can stream and browse online with no buffering or lagging. Furthermore, NordVPN prevents my internet service provider from bandwidth throttling, so I have a consistently reliable internet connection. It's the price of a cup of coffee every month, a small price to pay for premium cybersecurity and access to a vast amount of entertaining content from all over the world. Note, may not include blood sports. Grab your exclusive NordVPN deal by going to nordvpn.com/overtired to get a huge discount off your NordVPN plan, plus 4 months for free. It's completely risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. That's nordvpn.com/overtired. Go grab this amazing deal and start surfing securely at nordvpn.com/overtired.
Bang, splat, pow, Norwegian blood sports. One thing, when people say the cost of a cup of coffee, one at a time, what's your dollar amount? Christina?
Like $5.
Okay. Brett?
$2.75.
You're doing that. You're doing that diner coffee where they give you an early riser with no coffee, but then you pay $2.50 for the coffee.
I'm doing a double espresso in Winona, Minnesota. Cost me $2.75.
I'm going $7. I mean, because I like, as my former colleague who was female liked to say of me, I like those girly drinks.
Yeah, I was gonna say at this point, I don't even know what, because I don't go to Starbucks all that often, so I don't even like know what their pricing is. It's probably gone up though, as everything has. And if you're gonna get a larger size coffee, yeah, it probably is more than 5 at this point.
Yeah.
How much is a doppio?
What's a whoa? What's a doppio?
That's what Starbucks calls a double espresso.
Really? I thought that was a Smurf.
Yeah.
So that's cheaper than like the fancy drinks with the syrups and all the other stuff, but
Yeah,
it's
but I'm
still,
just saying, for me, that's a cup of coffee.
yeah, that's
Is a
but
doppio.
that's not 275 though at Starbucks.
Now, I don't. If you don't mind, I have a few more questions before
Yes.
even I have anything to say. Um, and I'm sorry that these are such rudimentary questions, but I bet there are people out there
No.
that share them with me.
Oh, I'm
So
sure there are.
you've just sort of bracketed the period of her career where she's with Big Machines, right? And
Yeah,
that label
so
is.
that was 2006 to 2017.
And
Yeah.
what's the first record outside of Big Machines? Is it a re-recording or is it a new record?
No. Her first one was Lover, which came out in 2019. And is sonically similar to Midnight's, although I think Midnight's improves on it, which that was the first one on Universal. And that was in
Okay.
2019. And then in
Okay.
2020 she dropped Folklore during the pandemic when no one was expecting it and it took everything by storm. Then she dropped Evermore as like the follow-up, that she did basically between the times they were released, like 3 months later. Then in I think in March of 2021, she did Fearless, which was her second album, but the first one to win Album of the Year at the Grammys. She now has 3 of those. And so that came out. So that was originally released in 2008. The re-release was in March, I think, of 2021. And then in November of 2021, she did the re-record of Red, which was her uh, fourth album, and the one that fans have a really strong liking to.
Yeah,
And
I'm a
then
huge
and
fan of. I'm a huge
yeah,
fan of that.
Red is my favorite album. Red is my favorite Taylor album. Like, so the chronology is debut Taylor Swift by Taylor Swift, Fearless, Speak Now, which she wrote entirely herself. That's going to be the next re-record based on this various Easter eggs she put in one of the music videos that came out. Um, so every song on Speak Now is written only by her, and that was sort of a response to people who claim the only reason she won the Grammy for Album of the Year was because other people wrote her work for her, and she was
Oof.
basically like, even though she'd written
That's
all the songs,
patently untrue.
Right.
As
right,
much as I might not be a diehard fan, that's patently
right.
untrue. I know that.
It absolutely is. But she was 19 years old, and so at the time she was the youngest Album of the Year winner. Billie Eilish has now surpassed that, but at the time she was the youngest, and so there were a lot of people who were literally saying the only reason you are anything is because you're a puppet, basically. So she wrote an album
Hmm.
called Speak Now, which was basically telling them go fuck yourselves. Then she did Red, which is my favorite. Then she did 1989, which is like the one when she switched from country music to full on pop, and that was like her
Also very
crossover album
good.
that very good. Like I think probably one of the most defining albums of the 2010s. I think by any estimation, just in terms of cultural influence. Then she did Reputation in 2017, and then Lover in 2019, and then yeah, we're caught up.
And then at what point in this whole thing is so for me, I knew of Taylor Swift when this happened, but when the whole Kanye thing happened,
That was in
I'm gonna let you
2009.
finish. That was
Yes.
2009. Okay.
That was 2009. So the song that was about was "You Belong with Me," which was off of her second album, Fearless.
Okay.
So this happens so the album comes out in like November 2008, but then that happened in August of 2009. She went on to then win the Grammy the following January. But by that time, she'd already released her third album, Speak Now. Um, no, I've got the timing wrong. She already won the Grammy, I guess, for Album of the Year in 2009. Okay. Um, has she? I don't know. I don't remember. Anyway, so the Kanye thing happened in 2009 regardless. That happened
Yeah.
in August of 2009 at the VMAs. And that was the first thing that for a lot of people got her on their attention because she did that and then she did Saturday Night Live, where she hosted and performed. And for a lot of people who didn't listen to the radio or weren't aware of things, like that was the president calling her a jackass was the thing that kind of like set her off into becoming like being like
that's right.
a best-selling country artist into being like this much bigger like pop culture figure.
I did it. I so wanted to just randomly interrupt your answer with an I'm going to let you finish line. And I didn't. I held it in. ADHD,
I appreciate
impulse
you.
control.
I mean, did you hold it in though
That's-
in the end?
No, you did.
I
You did. You could've.
I waited for her to take a breath, and then
You
I did
did.
it. And then
No, you did. And I was done with my thought.
I held it.
I'm proud
Like,
of you.
I feel it. I feel it in my bones. I was holding that in.
Brett, you've come a long way. Thank you. Okay, so this is great. So that brings us, I mean, what's interesting to me and what's helpful to me about what you've just shared is that it sounds like she's still in the process of doing these re-records, right?
Yes.
So
she's only done 2 of them. So she has a bunch more to do.
It is stunning to me. So Def Leppard did that, but they did it like 30 years later, right?
Right.
It's stunning to me to think of a pop star managing, one, all the bullshit around being a pop star, right?
Yep.
2, just making new albums that are good or that you're proud of.
Yep.
And 3, in the midst of all of that, revisiting old work in the most
Yes.
intensive way and re-recording
Yes.
it. Like that is like an incredible swirl of activity that must be almost a daily part of her life, every single bit of that.
Yeah, no, and she's now started directing her own music videos. Like, so basically, the last, if you look at her career, like the last 2 years were really the last 3, I guess, since Lover, because I guess she'd already maybe started. I think she had to wait until a certain point to embark on the re-records because it had to be 5 years, past a certain point, for some of the re-records to start. Like there was a timing thing involved.
Huh.
But like if you look at how prolific she's been just since 2020, it's unreal. Because again, we've had 3. So since 2019, we've had 4 actual albums and 2 re-records and a bunch of music videos and a 10-minute short film. And yeah.
That's
so you're.
Oh, go ahead, Brett.
You're eventually going to hear my thoughts on Midnights, whether this week or later. But I just want to say, the music videos from Midnights are a delightful mix of indie filmmaking with high budget effects.
Yes,
like
I agree.
They don't feel at all overproduced. They're just like, all of a sudden there's this thing that could not exist. You could not do it with practical effects. Like it's just happening. And I really appreciate the music videos from Midnights.
Well, I'm glad to hear you say that because I feel the same way. She used to work with Joseph Kahn a lot. He did a lot of her videos for 1989, and he's a very famous kind of like for his direction style of being like having really big kind of like boisterous videos and his like really out there productions. And I feel like she's kind of taken the best aspects of some of the things he did, but then added more of that indie kind of flavor. I'll be honest, I'm a huge fan of hers. I didn't expect her to be a good director. And I don't know why I didn't. It wasn't something I thought about her like excelling at, which is stupid because she's directed her whole career. But that was just not like,
for real.
that was just not like,
if anything is demonstrated by her meticulous songwriting capabilities,
absolutely,
it's her ability to direct. Like it's all there. So that makes perfect sense to me.
No, you're right. It does. And I don't know why. And it's not like I expected her to be bad at it. It just, maybe I just never even thought about it. I think because she's not a good actress. And she's not. And not to say that she couldn't be. I think that she wishes she were. And she's cast in some small roles because she's beautiful. But she's not a good actress. Like that's not where her talent lies. But she's an excellent director.
That's awesome. Okay, so this album, what did it mean to you? You're the biggest Taylor Swift fan I know by far. I know you buy all the, like, is it a comic book term I'm using wrong? A variants of the albums.
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
You got some you got some cassettes, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh yeah. I got cassettes. I got all the vinyl colors. Like yeah, no, I give her so much money. It's stupid. She doesn't need it.
So as her patron, what is this record to you?
I think it's a really good record. And I will be totally honest. My first listen through, I wasn't sure. My priors here, I think that Folklore and Evermore are some of the best work she's ever done. I think that Red and the Red re-recording, which added a bunch of extra tracks, which were just incredible. I think Red is her best work. And will probably remain that way. Not to say it's perfect. Like I think like 1989 is like a much like more perfect, pristine, precise package. But I think Red is just like for me, that's the one that like hits me and like puts me in the feels. And so those three records having happened, I loved so much, and it opened up this side of Taylor that I was not expecting. Like I'm a huge fan of the National, and I never expected like the two of them to work together. I never expected Bon Iver and Taylor to do songs together. I love Bon Iver because in my mind, those are the two different sides of my musical brain, right? Like I don't put those things in the same category. Not that I
Yeah,
don't
for
love
sure.
Taylor, just I don't put those in the same thing. And when they did and it worked so well, I
But
loved that. So go on.
you do put Bon Iver, The National, and Lana Del Rey kind of in the same category,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So this feels like a tendency from Taylor Swift to collaborate with this particular genre of
Now
musician.
it is. Now it is. But up until 2020 it hadn't been, right? Like she collaborated with not those people, right? Like I
Yeah,
think that I think there was probably fear in her part, and she's even expressed this. Like she didn't know if those people would want to collaborate with her,
sure.
which seems ridiculous. But I think that honestly, I'll say this: I think up until folklore, there was still a very strong part of like the music snob kind of music critic part who dismissed her, no matter how like you didn't, Brett, because you agreed, like you knew how good her songwriting was, but there were a
Yeah.
lot of people who completely dismissed her and didn't see her as an artist and was just like she's just this thing. Then those albums come out and all of a sudden people wake up and they go, oh holy shit, you are an artist. And so and you can work with these very celebrated musicians and songwriters, as you should. So for me it was a little bit jarring for her to go much more directionally similar to Lover, which is not my favorite album of hers. Some of the tracks on it are like, I think Cruel Summer is a great track. I think The Archer is fantastic, but that's not my favorite album of hers at all. And sonically, Midnight's is similar. So my first listen, I was a little bit like, okay, well, it's good to have Pop Taylor back. It was, we had a nice sojourn, but I guess it's good to hear it again. Then I listened to the record again, and on the second listen, I started like hearing more things and I started going, okay, I think this is more interesting than I gave it credit for. And now I think the more I've listened to it, and this could change, in 6 months. I think it's definitely my top 5 Taylor albums, which she has 10 of them. So, I don't think it's in the top 3 because I think that's Red, Evermore, Folklore. Maybe 1989 replaces one of the Folkmores. Um, but it's definitely in the top 5, and I think that I didn't expect that. So that was kind of my response, was that two things. One, it's a return to an old sound. Like she works with Jack Antonoff, who's her longtime friend and collaborator. He produces all the tracks on the main version. Aaron Dessner does do some stuff on the 3M version, but it's this return to pop. But it's this return, I think, after she now has achieved this sort of credibility from basically everyone in the industry that they they can't diminish her again, right? So it's almost like it almost feels like listening to her and going through the process, it's almost like she felt more free to just be like, no one is ever going to doubt my skills, whether they like the work or not, right? Like she's now solidified as an artist. So I think that it's interesting, like, and I like a lot of the songs. Like I think that a lot of the production things are interesting. I think a lot of the lyrics are really good. I think it's a really good record, but it was hard for me at first. That's my very overly long response.
Yeah. Wait, will you I may put this earlier, but will you state the sort of premise of this album and describe the 3 a.m. version?
Yeah. So the premise is basically it's stuff that keeps her up at night, which is why I call it the Overtired album, because she literally said that this was the things that she would think about that would keep her up at night, and the songs that she would write at midnight, and the thoughts going through her head, and the stories, and they're from various phases of her life. So that's the other big thing with this album, is it is a return to the confessional songwriting that she's famous for. On Evermore and Folklore, she stepped out of that a little bit. There was some of that, but most of it was just made up stories. This is back to that confessional songwriting from different eras of her life. and then the 3 a.m. section are 7 additional tracks that didn't fit thematically or for whatever reason on the album, but that she also recorded during those sessions. Many of them are very good. And she's famous for referencing like 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. in her song lyrics. So
Hmm.
having them come out at 3 a.m. like that's, it can be a little cloying. I enjoy it, but I understand other people find it cloying. She does a lot of these Easter egg things, but she is nothing if not self-referential and if not like highly, highly meticulous about, this stuff. And so, yeah, that's the two things. So the core album is 13 tracks. 13 is her lucky number. And then there's 7 additional 3 a.m. tracks, which pad out the whole thing.
Okay. Okay. Well, I will say that I loved, so this album just felt, it's an album that's delivered lightly. Like it doesn't come in like trying to prove itself, right? But at the
Right.
same time, she, when her like words and phrases as I'm working and listening to it like sneak through, it's always really like, I'm just like, oh, I'm glad I heard that. I'm glad, like, although I mean, beginning with an Antihero, like it's me,
Mm-hmm.
hi, I'm the problem, it's me. Like just the way
Yep.
she
Yeah.
delivers that, it being a great line on its own, but just being the way she delivers it is just fantastic. It doesn't feel,
Yeah.
it's really nice when an artist can like be really, they're really delivering something, right? But they're not all caught up in themselves delivering it. And that's how that album feels to me from her. It just feels like exactly what it is. It feels like a 10th album. Feels like somebody who's a few years out of a really shitty contract, right?
Mm-hmm.
And someone who knows herself deeply, especially since she has to revisit herself in the most,
Right.
detailed manners.
I feel like my opinion might have been swayed by Christina in the opposite way intended.
You
Like,
you like it
so
less?
if somebody loves something too much, then I instinctively, it's
Totally.
not cool to also love that thing.
See,
No, I totally get you. That's
even at
fine.
the scale of a friend, not like a culture or a society, but like a
Yeah,
friend. I'll
apparently,
remember to
because I
downplay that.
listen.
With no more gratitude. We're just gonna like be really like, well, I guess I kind of like this app a little bit. And Brett's gonna be like,
I
what app? What app?
like I listened to this album. I listened and I listened, and anytime a lyric caught my attention, I would go back and I would read all of the lyrics.
Mm-hmm.
And like repeatedly, I thought, holy shit, she is a wordsmith and an artisanal songwriter. Like
Mm-hmm.
she
Yeah.
crafts amazing songs. The fact was, I didn't feel anything the way I do when I listen to the music I know I love.
Right.
Like I feel something, I feel connected, and I didn't feel connected. Like I strong admiration. Like it is a solid album. The songwriting is on point. The lyrics are pretty amazing, as far as pop lyrics go.
Mm-hmm.
But it didn't connect with me on that deep level where I'm like, oh my God, this person, I could have a beer with this person, uh, much the way I could with George W. Bush. Just kidding. Um, but like, yeah, like it didn't connect in that deeper way. But I left it with a strong admiration, as I always do. Like I have always known Taylor Swift as an artful song creator. Just I didn't. It didn't touch me.
No.
Like the Divinals single, "When I Think About You, I Touch Myself," Brett. Um, I wonder how many podcasts the Divinals have even been mentioned on in the history of podcasts. Uh,
I don't want anybody
Anybody else?
else.
Me not think about you.
I touch myself. High.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
So, also Taylor on this album, well placed cuss words per our earlier
Mm-hmm.
conversation.
She's finally
Agreed.
started doing that. That's this is and it's Gawker actually wrote Kelly Conboy wrote a funny thing about how like she's 32 years old and she's finally learned to curse almost convincingly, and I think that's accurate because the first time she used some of the like, she would curse, we were all like, okay, this doesn't. And she curses in her real life, but it didn't feel right. It almost I think that the Kelly Conboy like nailed it. Like
That's
they're well
awesome.
placed. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, tell me something. What else do you want to know? What else do you want to say rather about this album? Because here we
I
are.
mean, I want to hear more from you. I mean, because I really enjoyed it. Like I said, like it's not. I think that I don't know. This is a hard album to do in some ways because the last two were so great, right? And brought in a whole new fan base. So in some ways, I kind of do appreciate the risk a little bit of being like, that there are going to be people like Brett who might have really connected with Folklore and Evermore, but are going to have admiration maybe for the art in this, but are not going to like want to listen to this record because they're not going to have the emotional connection. But I kind of weirdly kind of respect that. Like there's maybe like I think there's a lot of us would have just loved to hear like Taylor and Desner do more stuff together. I certainly would. Um, but I the one song that really got me, and this is the only one I really want to talk about, but I want to hear your thoughts, is Mastermind, which is the final track on the main version. And it's track 13. And I think that uh it encapsulates. So I've talked before on this podcast repeatedly, like I've done like psychoanalysis of her, which is unfair because I'm not a doctor or anything. This is what we do. Where like it's so clear that so many like she's still so much of her psyche and things are wrapped up in like the fact that she didn't have friends when she was a kid, and also the fact that like she is a very calculating and very strategic person, and she used to get really upset when people would say, oh, she's calculating or she's this or that, and like she would almost like treat it like people were slurring her, and it's like, okay, but you are, and that's what I love about her. Like I love the fact that she's not like Lana Del Rey is so cool, and Phoebe Bridgers are so cool, and like it feels more effortless for him. With Taylor that she's never not tried a day in her life. Like she cares so deeply about everything, which is
Mm.
to me part of the appeal with her. Like she's so type A. It's endearing for me. I understand how for other people it might not be, but for me it is. But to have the song Mastermind where she's basically talking about how it's presumably about her current like long-term partner who they've been together for like 6 years, who basically she's like, I saw you and I basically constructed this entire situation so that we would go home together because I wanted to fuck you. And I put everything together so that it would happen. And you had, thinking that you would have no idea that I put all these things into place. And then the final stanza is basically he knew the whole time that she was doing all of that and still kind of went along with it. But there is a bridge that I think just like it reaffirmed every headcanon I've ever had about her, which is no one wanted to play with me as a little kid, so I've been scheming like a criminal ever since to make them love me and make it seem effortless. This is the first time I felt the need to confess, and I swear I'm only cryptic and Machiavellian because I care.
I am interested that there's no. We're talking about
Yeah.
the issue with the anti-hero video, and her stepping on a scale that says fat, and the
Mm-hmm.
judging self next to her, kind of wagging a finger
Yep.
at her. As of when we're recording, that's been edited out. The little clip where you see fat
The
on the
fat part has
scale.
been edited out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And in response to people going, "Hey, that's kind of a messed up way to use that." We do not know yet if she will have a statement on this, right? She has not had a
Yeah.
statement. It may
She has
just
not.
be
She
that
usually
kind of
doesn't.
subtle removal
It'll
of the
probably be
word.
that. She almost never addresses things like that. Especially now. Like she used to maybe be a little more comic, but basically she does very few interviews now. She doesn't give statements like that. It'll be interesting. She recorded Graham Norton a couple days ago, and I don't know if he would bring it up or not. He might have had to agree not to. I have no idea.
So in your experience of her, like she's not someone who you'd be waiting on like a tweet storm from her, or an apology or a
No,
defense or whatever.
um, not anymore.
Yeah. So the comment is the edit, which is not
Right.
nothing. I mean, it was gone by the
It's
time
it's
I
it's
saw the
it's
video.
yeah. I was gonna say it's a capitulation, right? Like, I mean, I know we have a good gratitude, but were there any standout tracks for you that like you found yourself listening to more frequently?
Honestly, I mean, not to be boring, but fucking Anti-Hero. Like, it's a great
Yeah,
song.
it's a great
Agreed.
song.
Like that, I
Yep.
have
It's a
been
great
walking
song.
around with that song in my head for days now.
Yep,
It's a hit.
that's the one.
Yep.
Yeah, no, she is notorious for not choosing good singles. It's her first single, and she broke it this time. Like, she definitely, like, I agree. I think she nailed it. Like, I think the song's a hit. It's a smash.
It's great. And then I'm embarrassed I have not tracked the name on this because I have been listening to it just around the house. Which
Yeah.
is the one where she so nicely drops the F-bombs? Maybe you're on your own, kid? I can't.
Yeah, You're on Your Own, Kid, which is a track 5, which is really good. It might be on Vigilante Shit.
Yeah, it's one of those two. I like both those songs a lot. Oh, wait, we got the
Yeah.
E's. I'm looking at it now. We got Question, Vigilante Shit, Karma, and Snow on the Beach, whatever that means.
Oh, Snow on the Beach is weird but fucking beautiful. So
Yeah.
With
that's in the
Lana Del
chorus
Rey.
with Lana Del Rey, which is a great song.
That's the one I think I'm thinking of. Okay.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Awesome. All right, well, that was fun. I also like
Yeah.
I like iTunes' little like motion album covers now, and she's got her little flame
Yeah, I like that
flickering.
too.
It's a nice touch.
Yeah, I like that too. I like it too. And for any listeners out there, if you the lyric videos that she did like this time around are pretty good. She did
Yeah,
that
they
for
really are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
like the production, like it's actually even higher than they were for Folklore and Evermore. But yeah, the lyric videos
Did
are
she
really
make
good.
those lyric videos?
I mean, she or her team does. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, they are good. They were some of the best PowerPoint transitions I've ever seen.
That's what I'm saying. Like I look at it, I'm like, these are really freaking good. Like you've done good drone footage. I don't like. I mean, I'm sure she doesn't actually do it, but she art directs everything. Like, she's
Yeah.
like, yeah. So thank you
Awesome.
for
All right.
indulging us, Brett, to talk way too long about Taylor. I appreciate it.
Hey, this was the Taylor episode.
It had to be.
You agreed tacitly that we were no longer a Taylor podcast if
I do
we
agree.
got to come back
Yes.
for major album releases.
Yes.
And
yes.
this matters. This is a Taylor episode, and I believe the title should be "This is a Taylor Swift
podcast."
episode."
Noted.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, Graptitude. Graptitude. Who wants to go first?
Oh, I'm ready.
You're ready. Go.
you
Do
go.
it. Come on.
I'm
Bring
on
it.
this. Text Buddy.
Mm.
Tyler Hall made this app called Text Buddy that you can use as a service, or you can load it up and paste text into it, and it basically just performs all kinds of transformations on your text: uppercase, lowercase, snake case, and you can write your own custom converters for it. I have one that you can paste an entire Objective-C header file into it, and it will output. Yeah, nobody cares. But
Come
anyway,
on.
like,
No, we care. Come on.
well, so okay, so I made it, you can paste Objective-C method definitions into it, and it will output the header file code for you that you can just paste into the header file. And if you use it as a service, you can just select your methods in Xcode, hit your shortcut for the service, and then switch your header file and paste in the new method definitions. It's simple. It's easy. It's easy to write extensions for. It can do. I do not know offhand exactly how many conversions are built in, but it's got to be 50 plus.
Wow.
As an honorable mention, and this came up in our Discord, Boop. Boop is a Mac App Store app that is very similar, does text transformations. Personally, I'm a Text Buddy guy, but I will link Boop for anyone curious. Anyone who works with text regularly and needs to, sentence case or snake case something, just on the fly, both of these apps will do the trick nicely.
Awesome.
Nice.
Who goes next?
Are you ready, Jeff?
Can I?
Oh, go on.
Let me say
Do a
one thing.
bonus.
Bonus.
SetApp just announced a new app called Curio, and it is not the Curio we talked about last week. It is a news aggregation app, and I'm
Ooh.
pissed. I'm pissed that they took the name Curio,
Yeah.
and now if you Google SetApp Curio, you get something that is not the Curio that has. When we announced, like last week when we talked about Curio, it was within days of Curio's 20th anniversary. Like George went indie and started developing Curio full time 20 years ago. If anyone deserves the name Curio, it's George Browning. But
But there's also a
now,
3D printing design app called Curio.
yeah, it's a different space. That's not going to be on SetApp.
Right.
Like SetApp focuses on Mac apps, and I wish that they respected a 20-year veteran enough to not have a naming conflict
Man.
Who's the developer behind it? Because I think that like
of
they're
of the new app.
yeah,
Let's find out.
because they're the ones
I'll
I
do a
fault more than
search.
SetUp.
Curio SetApp Silhouette 101. No,
Yeah.
that's the printer. Okay, hold on. Journalism narrated is by.
Oh, I know this. Okay, yeah. So this is a service. This is basically one app for all the news. This is like a they claim they're gonna. It's sort of like Autumn, which the New York Times bought, where like they read the news for you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't. Curio.io
IO.
is the company behind it.
Right. So this started out, I think, as like a web service iOS app. So I'll give them a little bit of a pass. I didn't realize that there was uh yeah, there's not a Mac app. I mean, I didn't know it was in setup because that's clearly going to be some conflict. But I think that when this app was created, it was probably like not like they were like, well,
In a
we're not in
different
the same
realm,
space.
yes.
Exactly. Yeah, because
Yeah,
this is I subscribe to Autumn, which is very similar, but I
yeah.
think better actually, because I've tested Curio before, and the readers that Autumn has are just better. But I didn't realize this is part of setup now, which is interesting. Cool.
Awesome.
Jeff,
Sure.
Jeff, are you ready to go?
Yeah, I could go. I can't remember if this has been used before or not, but Dexset, which is
Oh yeah,
one of these
we've talked about it, but not
markdown. We've
yeah.
talked about it.
We ha- no, but it's been years. We haven't talked about it in years. So definitely, please make it hasn't been grafted to. So absolutely, tell us more about Dexset because Brett and I are
So
both fans.
Dexset, and there's another app that does this. Brett, you might remember better than me because I think you've talked to me about it.
There's another app that does it not as well with the very Java-like interface. Dexet is the more elegant version.
So Dexset is essentially just a way of creating presentations like PowerPoint style with a markdown file. And I have loved it for a long time. I mean, it's exactly why you like, if you like writing markdown or writing text files, it's exactly why you like that. You don't want to be distracted by design, which like, I just watched my wife put together a PowerPoint presentation and like the shit that she'd just be like, if I could only get it to do this one simple thing, I'd be done. Right. Like it's, it doesn't have nearly as many features as PowerPoint, which I don't fully dismiss. But as someone who really, as much as possible, needs to not get caught up in how things look while I'm creating, which is a big thing for me, it's just beautiful. And you can make really good looking slideshows. There's nice little templates. You put your images in. Anything you want to do, you can do. And the other thing is I've been going through and kind of archiving a project that I've been working on for about 5 years, just archiving some of the bits and pieces that are officially ready to be retired. And some of those are like presentations we gave to our funder or whatever. And as an example, I have one PowerPoint where I dragged in some photos and some images that were very large. Somehow this PowerPoint got to be, 2 gigabytes large. And the same thing done in deck set where I've just got a folder with images that I'm calling, right, is obviously it's just a text file, and it's a lot easier to kind of go back and revisit the past. It's like future proof, right? In ways that PowerPoint just can't be. So I don't know if I've done a good job of explaining it, but I
Yeah.
really
Here's
love
Yeah.
it.
here's my deck set story. I was at the Command D conference that Sal Seguin of AppleScript fame and Automator fame put on, and I was there as like a last minute volunteer ticket taker, like working to pay off my ticket, and the keynote speaker canceled uh, on the second day or first day. Maybe it was only a 1-day conference. Either way, the keynote speaker canceled, and they asked me to fill in same day in the keynote speaker spot. And so I'm there with my laptop, and I have maybe 2 hours to put together a presentation to try to wrap up the Command D Festival conference. And yeah, so I wrote it in Markdown. I used DeckSet. I output a deck. I presented it using DeckSet on the projector, and it was a breeze. Like for a quick and dirty, very good looking
Mm-hmm.
presentation written in with the simplicity of Markdown syntax, without any fiddling with font sizes or image placement or anything. Everything was just a breeze, and I pulled it off. I think I made a pretty good presentation, but it was all thanks to DeckSet.
What got me
Yeah.
to deck set was that like I was writing my PowerPoints in text files just to make sure that I had or like a kind of a grasp on what it was I was trying to say, that it wasn't too long.
Yeah.
And it was like, surely this can just become a PowerPoint presentation. And that's where it came in for me, is like, so I also just recommended as an exercise, just try making a presentation with DeckSet and see what it's like to
Mm-hmm.
actually just write out a little document, and how much
Uh-huh.
more, for me, how much more concise I was, succinct, like all that stuff. It was just way better. I want to also just add that they have a beta deck set for iOS that is
Oh,
Oh,
really?
nice. That I didn't know
beta
about.
mode.
Okay,
So
cool.
yeah, that's
That's
me.
great. Yeah. So my experience with it has been, so for work, I have to use Keynote or PowerPoint for a lot of things that I do, just because there are like either like requirements for style or other stuff. So for certain conferences, you have to do that. But if I'm doing something that can be more low key, especially if I'm doing a lot of code with it, DeckSet is great because it really does make inserting code blocks like that look good
Right.
one of the best ways you can do that. And that for me was kind of like the thing that kind of got me into it. It was and then I remember bringing it up to Brett, I think, on this podcast, and then he was like, "Oh yeah, I've known about this for years." I was like, "Oh, I was brand new to it." But for me, the big thing was honestly beyond just kind of like the quick and dirty and like being like, as you said, it is a great way of thinking more simply in a document. But for me, it is way easier to embed syntax highlighted code samples with it
Yeah.
than it is with Keynote or PowerPoint, where you have to do, you know, like the screenshot process and all that stuff. Like it's a lot easier. And then if you need to make a change to the code, you've got to redo another screenshot and all that stuff, which makes things complicated.
Right.
Which, interestingly enough, is a perfect segue to my gratitude, which is a new CLI tool from Charm, who we've talked about before. Like they do Gum and they do like the Charm libraries, like a Bubble Tea and other and lip gloss, like that help. Basically, it's a bunch of Go library stuff that make look do really good looking CLI tooling and make stuff really pretty. But they just released this thing called VHS, which lets you generate terminal GIFs or movie files
Ooh,
with code, and so
nice.
it is great. So there's this thing called a schema, which will
Hmm.
basically capture your output from a terminal in like a high resolution kind of specialty format that you can then share. You can either self-host it or do their own thing. But the problem with the schema is, sometimes I actually need the video file, and getting a video file from their format is a pain in the fucking ass. The same thing with trying to turn it into a GIF. The other thing is that is fine if you're wanting to actually type out everything yourself and capture it. Like, it's great. This is a little bit different. And then what it's doing is you're writing a script that is basically, they have this thing that they're calling like .tape, which is like their generative file. But you're basically writing a script that is going to say, this is what I want this text
Whoa.
output in this recording to do. So I want it to, this is the code that I want typed. This is how long I want to pause. This is the response that I'm looking for. This is how I want to interact with the response. You can customize the font. You can customize like the refresh rate. You can customize like colors. It's been out for 24 hours, so I haven't had a chance to play with
This
it
is
totally in depth.
fantastic.
But for a lot of the coding stuff that I have to do, like a lot for presentations or for demos or for videos, this is going to save me so much time. So it's called VHS.
It's amazing, and also in that kind of obviously like thinking in terms of future proof, right? Or like, how can I revisit this in 15 years? Like maybe I've still got the GIF, but in here you've written like essentially a little script, right?
Yep.
That's amazing.
Exactly. Right, which exactly the point of like what Deck said is like, okay, because if I need to make a change now, I just change that script.
Yeah.
Whereas I don't have to go back and re-record the whole thing. I don't have to recapture the whole thing. And what I don't think people have talked about enough, and this is like the problem that they announced it yesterday, and I know their team a little bit because of my previous shout outs, and I did actually a Twitch stream with them last week or week before last about sustainability and open source, and they're really good people. But like, I think a lot of people don't like understand like capturing terminal output is way more complex than it should be. If you want it to be high resolution and like the right frame rate, like I've gotten it down to a science, but it's not easy if you want it to be big enough, or if you want it like to have everything work right. Like it's not as easy as just use like a screen capture tool. Like it's like, no, there's more involved than that. And so this is really going to be great.
When most of the times, if I'm making a screencast for any marketing purposes, I script it.
Yeah.
And it's a pain in the ass to script it with Apple Script or whatever tool you're using. So this kind of tool would be amazing.
Yeah, you're going to love this. You're going to love using this for marketing. And marketing stuff is really what this is designed for, right? Like I would not do a full demo in this, obviously.
Yeah.
No. This is not what it's for, but if you need like an animated GIF or even like a video, kind of like of a few lines of code, but you want it to be high quality, you want it to be, useful in other things. You can even the way
smooth and without a lot of backspacing and pauses.
Yes.
Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
Plus what's nice about this too, your output, not only can you output in GIF or MP4, you can also output as like frames in PNG.
Nice.
So I think what it's doing under the hood is that it's like using like a web scraper like Chrome, and then basically doing kind of like generating the code based on your scripting, and then kind of doing a recording in on that. So it's automating, like you were probably doing something very similar, Brett, with the way you were scripting things with Apple Script. I never got that involved. I was like, I'll use a Schema and I'll do, have some presets in ScreenFlow, but I never like did what you're doing. But this is like, I think that this is pretty clever.
That's awesome. I love it. Also just love all of their stuff.
Yeah, me too. I think that their branding, everything about them, like they're really cool. I'm actually going to meet them at a GitHub Universe.
Oh, nice.
I'm
so jealous.
Yeah,
awesome.
I know. I wish you could be there.
Hey, that Twitch, is it recorded somewhere?
Yes. I will find it and link it in the show notes.
Great. Awesome.
I ran SearchLink on VHS Charm, and it literally gave me a VHS Charm bracelet like thing. I don't think that's what we want.
I don't think so.
I'll find the right link.
No, I'll edit that yawn out. Sorry. Awesome. This was fun.
Yeah.
All right, people.
Awesome.
Get some sleep, though.
Yeah.
Get some sleep, Jeff.
Yeah. I'll do my best.
Get some sleep, Brett and Jeff.
Get some sleep, Christina and Brett. We got it.
The system is going down low.